Good morning. It is super windy, so we'll be filming through the windshield. Got my little cypress here. There's actually two of them. Come out. See how beautiful it is. All right, we continue. I'm going to have to go backwards to go forward. Winter Memories. I believe this was Willa Cather, the continuation of her story. We were cut off abruptly yesterday. Winter Memories. There were certain days in her life, outwardly uneventful, which Alexandra remembered as peculiarly happy. Days when she was close to the flat, fallow world about her and felt as if it were in her own body, the joyous germination in the soil. There were days, too, which she and Emile had spent together, upon which she loved to look back. There had been such a day when they were down on the river in the dry year, looking over the land. They had made an early start one morning and had driven a long way before noon. When Emile said he was hungry, they drew back from the road, gave Brigham his oats among the bushes, and climbed up to the top of a grassy bluff to eat their lunch under the shade of some little elm trees. The river was clear there and shallow, since there had been no rain, and it ran in ripples over the sparkling sand. Under the overhanging willows of the opposite bank, there was an inlet where the water was deeper and flowed so slowly that it seemed asleep in the sun. In this little bay, a single wild duck was swimming and diving and preening her feathers, disporting herself very happily in the flickering light and shade. They sat for a long time watching the solitary bird take its pleasure. No living thing had ever seemed to Alexandra as beautiful as that wild duck. Emile must have felt about it as she did. Emile must have felt about it as she did, for afterwards, when they were at home, he used sometimes to say, "Sister, you know our duck down there." Alexandra remembered that day as one of the happiest in her life. Alexandra remembered years afterward, she thought of the ducks as still there, swimming and diving all by herself in the sunlight, a kind of enchanted bird that did not know age or change. Most of Alexandra's happy memories were as impersonal as this one, yet to her they were very personal. Her mind was a white book with clear writing about weather and beasts and growing things. Not many people would have cared to read it, only a happy few. She had never been in love. She had never indulged in sentimental reveries. Even as a girl, she had looked upon men as work fellows. She had grown up in serious times. There was one fancy, indeed, which persisted through her girlhood. It most often came to her on Sunday mornings, the one day in the week when she lay late abed listening to the familiar morning sounds, the windmill singing in the brisk breeze, Emile whistling as he blackened his boots down by the kitchen door. Sometimes as she lay thus luxuriously idle, her eyes closed, she used to have an illusion of being lifted up bodily and carried lightly by someone very strong. It was a man, certainly, who carried her, but he was like no man she knew. He was much larger and stronger and swifter, and he carried her as easily as if she were a sheaf of wheat. She never saw him, but with eyes closed, she could feel that he was yellow, like the sunlight, and there was the smell of ripe cornfields about him. She could feel him approach, bend over her, and lift her. And then she could feel herself being carried swiftly off across the fields. After such a reverie, she would rise hastily, angry with herself, and go down to the bathhouse that was partitioned off the kitchen shed. There she would stand in a tin tub and prosecute her bath with vigor, finishing it by pouring buckets of cold well water over her gleaming white body, which no man on the Divide could have carried very far. As she grew older, this fancy more often came to her when she was tired than when she was fresh and strong. Sometimes after she had been in the open all day, overseeing the branding of the cattle or the loading of the pigs, she would come in chilled, take a concoction of spices and warm, homemade wine, and go to bed with her body actually aching with fatigue. Then, just before she went to sleep, she had the old sensation of being lifted and carried by a strong being who took from her all her bodily weariness. And that is the end of that part. But we continue. A little swig here. Everything's all right, baby boy. Looks clear, my friends. Looks clear. Excuse me, Lord. All right, the next lady, Eleanor Pruitt Stewart, 1878 through 1933. Eleanor Rupert Pruitt was a widow with a young daughter when her minister suggested she might find a position as a housekeeper for some rancher. She did just that, and her new employer in Burnt Fork, Wyoming, was a Scotsman who played the bagpipes. After only 6 weeks' time, she and Clyde Stewart decided that ranch work seemed to require that we be married first and do our sparking afterward. Almost immediately, she filed a claim on the adjoining parcel of land and considered she had become not only a wife, but a bloated landowner. Eleanor wrote a series of 26 letters to her friend in Colorado. The letters were published as a book, and the book became the basis of the film Heartland from 1980. Pruitt wrote that she was lucky to have healthy, well-formed children, my clean, honest husband, my kind, gentle milk cows, my garden, flowers, chickens, turkeys, and pigs. She ran a mowing machine, learned to shoot and to fish, rode a pack horse through a snowstorm, and when there was no preacher to be found, she read from the Bible and buried one of her own children. She was proud of the work she had done, but most of all, she was proud of land that she owned. I am thinking of the troops of tired, worried women, sometimes even cold and hungry, scared to death of losing their places to work. Who could have plenty to eat? Who could have good fires by gathering the wood, and comfortable homes of their own, if they but had the courage and determination to get them? To me, homesteading is the solution of all poverty's problems. ... Eleanor Stewart had a husband whose help contributed to her success, but other women in northern Colorado and Wyoming, most of them widows and spinsters, began to file their own claims for land, and their rate of success was approximately the same as men's. All right. These are some writings from Eleanor Pruitt Stewart from Letters of a Woman Homesteader from 1914. And the Pruitt in this is Pruitt. Excuse me, Lord. All right, Letters of a Woman Homesteader. The arrival at Burnt Fork, Wyoming, April 18th, 1909. Dear Mrs. Coney, are you thinking I'm lost, like the babes in the wood? Well, I am not, and I'm sure the robins would have the time of their lives getting leaves to cover me out there. I am way up close to the Forest Reserve of Utah, within half a mile of the line, 60 miles from the railroad. I was 24 hours on the train and 2 days on the stage. And oh, those 2 days. The snow was just beginning to melt, and the mud was about the worst I ever heard of. The first stage we tackled was just about as rickety as it could very well be, and I had to sit with the driver, who was a Mormon, and so handsome that I was not a bit offended when he insisted on making love all the way, especially after he told me that he was a widower Mormon. But of course I had no chaperone. I looked very fierce. Not that that was very difficult with the wind and mud as allies. And I told him my actual opinion of Mormons in general and particular. Meantime, my new employer, Mr. Stewart, sat upon a stack of baggage and was dreadfully concerned about something he calls his tookie. But I am unable to tell you what that is. The road being so muddy was full of ruts, and the stage acted as if it had the hiccups and made us all talk as though we were affected in the same way. Once Mr. Stewart asked me if I did not think it a gay dear trip. I told him he could call it gay if he wanted to, but it didn't seem very hilarious to me. Every time the stage struck a rock or a rut, Mr. Stewart would hoot until I began to wish we would come to a hollow tree or a hole in the ground so he could go in with the rest of the owls. At last, we arrive, and everything is just lovely for me. I have a very, very comfortable situation, and Mr. Stewart is absolutely no trouble. For as soon as he has his meals, he retires to his room and plays on his bagpipe. Only he calls it his bug peep. It is "The Campbells Are Coming," without variation. In intervals all day long and from 7 till 11 at night. Sometimes I wish they would make haste and get here. There is a saddle horse, especially for me, and a little shotgun with which I am to kill sage chickens. We are between two trout streams, so you think of me as being happy when the snow is through melting and the water gets clear. We have the finest flock of Plymouth Rocks and get so many nice eggs. It sure seems fine to have all the cream I want after my town experiences. Jerian is making good use of all the good things we are having. She rides the pony to water every day. I have not filed on my land yet, because the snow is 15 feet deep on it, and I think I would rather see what I am getting. So we'll wait until summer. They have just 3 seasons here: winter and July and August. We are to plant our garden the last of May. When it is so I can get around, I will see about land. I will see about land and find out if I can and tell you. I think this letter is about to reach 32nd Lee, so I will send you my sincerest love and quit tiring you. Please write me when you have time. Sincerely yours, Eleanor Rupert. Okay, so that one was from April 18th. This next one, called Filing a Claim, is from May 24th of 1909. Dear Mrs. Coney, well, I have filed on my land and am now a bloated landowner. I waited a long time to even see land in the reverse, and the snow is yet too deep. So I thought that as they have but 3 months of summer and spring together, and as I wanted the land for ranch anyway, perhaps I had better stay in the valley. So I have filed adjoining Mr. Stewart, and I am well pleased. I have a grove of 12 swamp pines on my place, and I am going to build my house there. I thought it would be very romantic to live on the peaks amid the whispering pines, but I reckon It would be powerfully uncomfortable as also. And I guess my 12-can whipper, enough for me. And the dandy thing is, I have all the nice snow water I want. A small stream runs right through the center of my land, and I am quite near wood. And I am quite near wood. Oh, English. Okay, here we go. Stay with me. A neighbor and his daughter were going to Green River, the county seat, and said I might go along, so I did, as I could file there as well as at the land office, and oh, that trip! I had more fun to the square inch than Mark Twain or Samantha Allen ever provoked. It took us a whole week to go and come. We camped out, of course, for in the whole 60 miles there was but one house, and going in that direction there is not a tree to be seen. Nothing but sage, sand, and sheep. About noon the first day out, we came near a sheep wagon, and stalking along ahead of us was a lanky fellow, a herder, going home for dinner. Suddenly it seemed to me I should starve if I had to wait until we got where we had planned to stop for dinner. So I called out to the man, "Little Bo Peep, have you anything to eat? If you have, we'd like to find it." And he answered, "As soon as I am able, it shall be on the table, if you'll but trouble to get behind it. Shades of Shakespeare, songs of David, the shepherd poet? What do you think of us?" Well, we got behind it, and a more delicious it I never tasted. Such coffee, and out of such a pot. I promised Bo Peep that I would send him a crock with pink ribbons on it, but I suspect he thinks I am a crook without the ribbons. Crock with whatever. Crook and crock. Okay, I'm gonna try that again. I promised Bo Peep that I would send him a crook with pink ribbons on it, but I suspect he thinks I am a crook without the ribbons. Nope. Didn't particularly make it better. Here we go. We're going to continue on. More English words. The sagebrush is so short in some places that it is not large enough to make a fire. So we had to drive until quite late before we camped that night. After driving all day, what seemed a level desert of sand, we came about sundown to a beautiful canyon, down which we had to drive for a couple of miles before we could cross. In the canyon, the shadows had already fallen, but when we looked up, we could see the last shafts of sunlight on the tops of the great bare buttes. Suddenly, a great wolf started from somewhere and galloped along the edge of the canyon, outlined black and clear by the setting sun. His curiosity... Okay, hang on. Let's have another drink. Suddenly a great wolf started from somewhere and galloped along the edge of the canyon, outlined black and clear by the setting sun. His curiosity overcame him at last, so he sat down and waited to see what manner of beast we were. I reckon he was disappointed for he howled most dismally. I thought of Jack London's The Wolf. After we quitted the canyon, I saw the most beautiful sight. It seemed as if we were driving through a golden haze. The violet shadows were creeping up between the hills, while away back of us, the snow-capped peaks were catching the sun's last rays. On every side of us stretched the poor, hopeless desert. The sage, grim and determined to live in spite of starvation, and the great, bare, desolate buttes. The beautiful colors turned to amber and rose, and then to the general tone, dull gray. Then we stopped to camp, and such a scurrying around to gather brush for the fire and to get supper. Everything tasted so good. Jareen ate like a man. Then we raised the wagon tongue and spread the wagon sheet over it and made a bedroom for us women. We made our beds on the warm, soft sand and went to bed. It was too beautiful a night to sleep, so I put my head out to look and to think. I saw the moon come up and hang for a while over the mountain, as if it were discouraged with the prospect, and the big white stars flirted shamelessly with the hills. I saw a coyote come trotting along. I felt sorry for him, having to hunt food in so barren a place. But when presently I heard the whir of wings, I felt sorry for the sage chickens he had disturbed. At length, the cloud came up, and I went to sleep. The next morning was covered several inches with snow. And the next one, that one was from May. This is October 14th, 1911, so it's 2 years later in October. Here comes the sun, my friends. Thank you for being with me. I've really been enjoying these stories. Let's see what this next one leads us. Proving Up, October 14th, 1911. Dear Ms. Rasconi, I think you must be expecting an answer to your letter by now, so I will try to answer as many of your questions as I remember. Your letter has been mislaid. We have been very much rushed all this week. We had the thresher crew 2 days. I was busy cooking for them 2 days before they came, and I've been busy ever since cleaning up after them. Clyde has taken the thresher on up the valley to thresh for the neighbors, and all the men have gone along, so the children and I are alone. No, I shall not lose my land, although it will be over 2 years before I can get a deed to it. The 5 years in which I am required to prove up will have passed by then. I could not have held my homestead if Clyde had also been proving up, but he had accomplished that 2 years ago and has his deed. So I am allowed my homestead. Also, I have not yet used my desert right. So I am still entitled to 160 acres more. I shall file that much someday when I have sufficient money of my own earnings. The law requires a cash payment of 25 cents per acre at the filing, and $1 more per acre when final proof is made. I should not have married. If Clyde had not promised, I should meet all my land difficulties unaided. I wanted the fun and the experience. For that reason, I want to earn every cent that goes into my own land and improvements myself. Sometimes I almost have a brainstorm wondering how I am going to do it, but I know I shall succeed. Other women have succeeded. I know of several who are now where they can laugh at past trials. Do you know? I am a firm believer in laughter. I am real superstitious about it. I think if bad luck came along, he would take to his heels if someone laughed right loudly. And then the next one. Let's see. Still looks okay to me. Marriage and a funeral. Dear Ms. Rasconi, every time I get a new letter from you, I get a new inspiration, and I am always glad to hear from you. I have often wished I might tell you all about my Clyde, but have not because of two things. One is, I could not even begin without telling you what a good man he is, and I didn't want you to think I could do nothing but brag. The other reason is the haste I married in. I am ashamed of that. I am afraid you will think me a Becky Sharp of a person. Hang on. So I guess Becky Sharp was their Karen or... Oh my goodness, let me try that again. The other reason is the haste I married in. I am ashamed of that. I am afraid you will think me a Becky Sharp of a person. But although I married in haste, I have no cause to repent. That is very fortunate because I have never had one bit of leisure to repent in. So I am lucky all around. The engagement was powerfully short because both agreed that the trend of events and ranch work seemed to require that we be married first and do our sparking afterward. You see, we had to chink in the wedding between times, that is, between planting the oats and other work that must be done, early or not at all. In Wyoming, ranchers can scarcely take time, even to be married in the springtime. That having been settled, the license was sent for by mail, and as soon as it came, Mr. Stewart saddled Chub and went down to the house of Mr. Pearson, the justice of the peace and a friend of long standing. I had never met any of the family, and naturally rather dreaded to have them come, but Mr. Stewart was firm in wanting to be married at home, so he told Mr. Pearson he wanted him and his family to come up the following Wednesday and serve papers on the woman I the whose. They were astonished, of course, but being such good friends, they promised him all the assistance they could render. They are quite the dearest, most interesting family. I have since learned to love them as my own. Well, there was no time to make wedding clothes, so I had to do up what I did have. Isn't it queer how sometimes do what you can, work will keep getting in the way until you can't get anything done. That is how it was with me those few days before the wedding. So much so that when Wednesday dawned, everything was topsy-turvy, and I had a very strong desire to run away. But I always did hate a piker, so I stood pat. Now I had the most of the dinner cooked, but it kept me hustling to get the house into anything like a decent order before the old dog barked, and I knew my moments of liberty were limited. It was blowing a perfect hurricane and snowing like mid-winter. I had bought a beautiful pair of shoes to wear on that day, but my vanity had squeezed my feet a little. So when I was so busy at work, I had kept on a worn old pair, intending to put on the new ones later. But when the Pearsons drove up, all I thought about was getting them into the house where there was fire. So I forgot all about the old shoes and the apron I wore. I had only been here 6 weeks then, and was a stranger. That is why I had no one to help me, and was so confused and hurried. As soon as the newcomers were warm, Mr. Stewart told me I had better come over by him and stand up. It was a large room I had to cross, and how I did it before all those strange eyes, I never knew. All I can remember very distinctly is hearing Mr. Stewart saying, "I will," and myself chiming in that I would, too. Happening to glance down, I saw that I had forgotten to take off my apron or my old shoes. But just then Mr. Pearson pronounced us man and wife, and as I had dinner to serve right away, I had no time to worry over my odd toilet. Anyway, the shoes were comfortable and the apron white, so I suppose it could have been worse. And I don't think it has ever made any difference with the Pearsons, for I number them all among my most esteemed friends. It is customary here for newlyweds to give a dance and supper at the hall, but as I was a stranger, I preferred not to, and so it was a long time before I became acquainted with all my neighbors. I had not thought I should ever marry again. Darian was always such a dear little pal, and I wanted to just knock about footloose and free to see life as a gypsy sees it. I had planned to see the Cliff Dwellers' home, to live right there, until I caught the spirit of the surroundings enough to live over their lives in imagination. Anyway, I had planned to see the old missions and go to Alaska, to hunt in Canada. I even dreamed of Honolulu. Life stretched out before me one long, happy jaunt. I aimed to see all the world I could, but to travel unknown bypaths to do it. But first I wanted to try homesteading. Little Jamie was the first little Stewart. God has given me 2 more precious little sons. The old sorrow is not so keen now, I can bear to tell you about it, but I never could before. When you think of me, you must think of me as one who is truly happy. It is true. I want a great many things I haven't got, but I don't want them enough to be discontented and not enjoy the many blessings that are mine. I have my home among the blue mountains, my healthy, well-formed children, my clean, honest husband, my kind, gentle milk cows, my garden, which I make myself. I have loads and loads of flowers, which I tend myself. There are lots of chickens, turkeys, and pigs, which are my own special care. I have some slow, old, gentle horses and an old wagon. I can load up the kitties and go where I please any time. I have the best, kindest neighbors, and I have my dear absent friends. Do you wonder I am so happy? Okay, let's try that again. Do you wonder I am so happy? When I think of it all, I wonder how I can crowd all my joy into one short life. I don't want you to think for one moment that you are bothering me when I write you. It is a real pleasure to do so. You're always so good to let me tell you everything. I am only afraid of trying your patience too far. Even in this long letter, I can't tell you all I want to. So I shall write you again soon. Jerry Ann will write too. Just now she has very sore fingers. She has been picking gooseberries, and they have been pretty severe on her brown little paws. With much love to you, I am honest and truly yours, Eleanor Rupert Stewart. All right. And then there's another one. It doesn't have a date on this one. Dear Mrs. Coney, when I read of the hard times among the Denver poor, I feel like urging them, everyone, to get out and file on land. I am very enthusiastic about women homesteading. It really requires less strength and labor to raise plenty to satisfy a large family than it does to go out to wash, with the added satisfaction of knowing that their job will not be lost to them if they care to keep it. Even if improving the place does go slowly, it is that much done to stay done. Whatever is raised is the homesteader's own, and there is no house rent to pay. This year, Jerry cut and dropped enough potatoes to raise a ton of fine potatoes. She wanted to try, so we let her, and you will remember that she is but 6 years old. We had a man to break the ground and cover the potatoes for her, and the man irrigated them once. That was all that was done until digging time, when they were plowed out and Jerry picked them up. Any woman strong enough to go out by the day could have done every bit of the work and put in 2 or 3 times that much. And it would have been so much more pleasant than to work so hard in the city and then be on starvation rations in the winter. To me, homesteading is the solution of all poverty's problems. But I realize that temperament has much to do with success in any undertaking. And persons afraid of coyotes and work and loneliness had better let ranching alone. At the same time, any woman who can stand her own company can see the beauty of the sunset, loves growing things, and is willing to put in as much time at careful labor as she does over the wash tub, will certainly succeed. Will have independence, plenty to eat, all the time, and a home of her own in the end. Experimenting need cost the homesteader no more than the work, because by applying to the Department of Agriculture at Washington, he can get enough of any seed and as many kinds as he wants to make a thorough trail. And it doesn't even cost postage. Also, one can always get bulletins from there and from the experiment station of one's own state concerning any problem or as many problems as may come up. I would not for anything allow Mr. Stewart to do anything towards improving my place, for I want the fun and the experience myself, and I want to be able to speak from experience when I tell others what they can do. Theories are very beautiful, but facts are what must be had, and what I intend to give some time. Here I am boring you to death with things that cannot interest you. You'd think I wanted you to homestead, wouldn't you? But I am only thinking of the troops of tired, worried women, sometimes even cold and hungry, scared to death of losing their places to work, who could have plenty to eat, who could have good fires by gathering the wood, and comfortable homes of their own, if they but had the courage and determination to get them. I must stop right now before you get so tired you will not answer. With much love to you from Jareen and myself, I am affectionately yours, Eleanor Rupert Stewart. Wow. We got 12 minutes. I think that I can fit this last lady's. It's to be... No, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3... It's 4 pages. Let's see what happens. Annie Ellis, 1875 through 1938. Annie Ellis, seamstress, camp cook, politician, and memoirist, was born in Missouri in 1875. As a small child, she crossed the plains in an ox-drawn cart with her mother, father, sister, grandfather, and assorted members of her father's family. Settling in Bonanza, Colorado, the extended family found a hard life, especially after Annie's father deserted them. When Annie was 18, her mother died, leaving her with 3 cows and 6 brothers and sisters to care for on her own. Faced with the desperate situation, she chose to marry a miner, George Fleming, and sent her sisters and brothers and the cows to live with Annie's father in Bonanza. Over the course of the next 10 years, she was widowed twice. Such was often the fate of miners' wives. After her second husband's death, she was left penniless, alone with her 2 small children and her big dreams of sending them to college. After several of her efforts at baking and sewing for money failed, she agreed to open a boarding house for the Vindicator mine. And later she used the skills she learned running the boarding house kitchen to hire herself on with the telegraph building crew as a camp cook. In this selection from her memoir, she tells of life on the trail, the vast quantity of foods she prepared each day for the workmen, and of the pleasures she found in her rare free moments in the mountains. After her asthma prevented her from continuing as a camp cook, Ellis ran a sheep shearing camp kitchen, and later she ran for office on a whim as treasurer of Saguache County, Colorado, and won despite the fact that she did not know the multiplication tables or how to write a check. But the job paid well, and it allowed her to put both her son and daughter through college. After 2 successful terms as county treasurer, she retired to move to a lower altitude and settled into a sanatorium in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There she made friends who encouraged her to write down her memoirs. And Ellis, desperately needing the money, did. Income from her 3 volumes of memoirs: The Life of an Ordinary Woman from 1929, Plain Annie Ellis, 1931, and Sunshine Preferred, 1933, supported her for the rest of her life. Returning to Colorado in the spring of 1938 to receive an honorary degree at the University of Colorado, Ellis settled in Denver, where she died the same year at the age of 63. All right, here is her writing. Annie Ellis. Here we go. And I say Annie because A-N-N-E could be Anne. If you're kin to this person and you're upset about my form of English. Okay. Cooking in a telegraph camp. I usually rode with Primo, a born gentleman, who always waited for me to start the conversation. I tried always to talk of things that would interest him, his team mostly. For hours we would never speak. Then I would say, "I believe I will walk for a while, Primo." And he would stop, let me off, drive on out of sight. Then, gentleman that he was, halt the horses and wait for me to come up to him. Once while waiting, he went into an old abandoned cabin and found a tattered, mildewed magazine. In it was a poem by Ella Wheeler Wilcox called, I think, Crucifixion, which was to the effect that we make such a fuss over crucifying Christ and yet go on doing it each day in our treatment of laboring children, animals, and other races. Also, in it was a picture of Christ on the cross. I hung it on the wall of the tent, and felt that it was a sort of a protection, and I always keep it in my bedroom now. We made camp beside the Los Pinos, also as full of fish now as when Mr. Townsend was there. One day, Earl was fishing and had a line with 3 hooks on it. I called him and he dropped his pole for the moment. When he returned, he had 3 fish. The first things we unloaded were the cook tent and the dining tent, stove, and the supplies. Our tables were boards on trestles. All the tables were white oilcloth covered. All the dishes were white enamel. In our camp, there was a place for everything, and there it was placed. Now, many years later, if we were unloading, I'm sure both the boss and I would know where every box, dish, knife, and fork, pan, and kettle should go. Our case goods were stacked on one side of the cook tent, till it seemed almost like the shelves in a store. My opened sack of sugar, flour, cornmeal, and so on were kept in a large mouse-fly-proof grub box. Above my work table in the boxes supplied with shelves, I kept lard, salt, pepper, extracts, soda, baking powder, and so on. As far as I know, I was the only one in camp who had whiskey, which was used in case of emergency and for pudding sauce. In the dining tent were the long table and my bed, which last was always covered with a white sheet. It was a sanitary cot with folding sides. No man in all my years of camping ever sat on my bed, except an underbred forest ranger who rode up one day and, leaving the saddle and pack on his tired horses, came in to wait for dinner. He threw himself full length, spurs and all, on my bed, and when I told him it wasn't done and suggested he feed and water his horses, he looked at me, hurt, and in a ain't women fools manner. Our fresh meat was brought by the quarter or half, and in the daytime was kept rolled in canvas. At night it was hung high in a tree. At each new camp, men were set to digging a pit for a toilet, also a second pit in front of the cook tent, into which all waste, empty cans, and wash water was thrown. Before leaving a camp, both these pits were filled in and covered over with dirt. Also, all debris was burned. In spite of the hard work getting up before daylight and not getting to bed before 10, I loved it all. The restfulness of running water and rustling leaves, the dancing shadows of leaves on the tent, either in sunlight or moonlight, grasses swaying in the wind, frost-painted bushes, the twitter and song of birds, the buzz of flies, the daring and triumphant whine of mosquitoes, the rasping call of blue jay and camp robber, the chirps of chipmunks, the whistle of conies, and the rustle and squeak of mice, men's voices in narrative and argument, usually laughing, seldom quarreling, better behaved than in their own homes. I don't know why, except that they had most of the home comforts and no home irritations. Then, too, being close to nature brings out the best in humanity. But after all, the main cause of their contentment was that they were well fed. I felt my position as providing their muscle and morale. Food was as carefully selected, cooked, and decorated as though we were in an expensive hotel. And this is a secret. Desserts, although lots of work, are much cheaper than beans, meat, and bread. Once one of the men called me a working fool, but you see, I enjoyed it. I was expressing myself. Somewhere I have a season's menu. More government red tape, and you'd be surprised to read it. This would be a sample. Okay, breakfast. Hot, well-cooked cereal. A different kind each day of the week so they would not tire. Coffee. Stewed dried fruit. Each day different. Either bacon, ham, and eggs. Or fresh fish. Fried potatoes. Hot biscuits, always. And either coffee cake, donuts, or cookies. Example for dinner. Soup, tea, and coffee. A meat of some kind with gravy, potatoes, other vegetables, if canned, cooked differently from the usual manna. Hot rolls, a salad. Yes, a salad in the mountains where there was no lettuce. But there were canned vegetables, cabbage, potatoes, apples, and fish. For dessert, we'd have pie with hard sauce and cheese. Supper would be much the same as dinner, except that we would have no soup and have cake and pudding for dessert. Now, for Sundays, I planned something special and always made lemon pie. I make good ones. I'd also make a huge platter of candy. Holidays were observed by decorations on salads or cakes. Once on Primo's birthday, I baked and decorated a cake for him. And when they were all seated at the table, I took it in and put it beside his plate. There was much talk and shouting from everyone except Primo. He only smiled up at me, his winning smile. Instinctively, Mexicans are well-mannered. When they had finished eating, Primo asked me for a clean knife, then stood and cut his cake, walked along the benches, and passed it to each man there, then to me. When the men were all gone, he came to me and thanked me for my kindness. We had few camp rules. Of these, I remember only that there was to be no swearing, no wrestling in cook or dining tent, and that it was a crime for a man to call my attention by tapping on a cup. Hallelujah. If a newcomer swore in cook or dining tent, really they both were one. The men looked at him and maybe frowned. Anyway, he was made to understand he had committed a faux pas. I don't know how to spell or say it, but I know what it means. And no birds or chipmunks were to be killed. One Sunday after the dinner work was done, I climbed a nearby mountain. I wanted to be alone. The men were doing their Sunday cleaning up, washing their clothes, cutting hair, shaving, and so on. After a time, I heard the crack of guns and thought they were shooting at a mark. But when I returned, in the pit I saw sticking out from loose new dirt the tips of bushy tails and the gray and blue of jay and camp robber wings. I didn't say anything out loud, but for 2 Sundays, they had no candy. That's my girl. It's the little things. And they need the rules. Will not reward you for breaking rules. Okay, further readings is Catherine Lavender, Not So Plain Annie Ellis, in Plain Annie Ellis, University of Nebraska Press, 1997. Elliot West, Forward in Life of an Ordinary Woman, and Plain Annie Ellis, Master of Letters, Colorado Quarterly, Volume 6, Number 1, Summer, 1957. And Annie Matlack, The Spirit of Annie Ellis, Colorado Quarterly, 4-1, Summer, 1955, 61 to 72. Wow. I liked her. I've liked all of them so far. Thank you for being with me as we continue. I don't know that I'm going to be able to show you this book. Let's see what we can do here. Not showing you everything I meant. I got you stuck in there. Hang on. Alright, here's our book. We're going to show you. Thank you for being with me. I appreciate you.